The courthouse steps groaned under Sarah Chen's sneakers as if they too knew how heavy her world had become. In her hands, she clutched a deed that looked ordinary on paper but felt like the thinnest thread keeping her and her twin boys from falling into oblivion. $400.37. That was all she had left after the bank had stripped away everything. Her home, her car, even the college fund she'd promised to Tommy and James. What she received instead was 43 acres of land everyone else called worthless. The locals nicknamed it the Devil's Backyard, and the tax office had written it off as wasteland, good for nothing but dust and weeds. Behind her, the courthouse doors slammed shut like a coffin lid, sealing off the life she had lost. The wind whipped through the plaza, tossing leaves like losing lottery tickets, and on her phone another cruel message buzzed from Marcus, her ex-husband, mocking her decision. "Classic Sarah," he typed. "Buying a dirt pile? The kids deserve better than your fantasies." She deleted the text without replying, but the words cut deeper than the October chill gnawing through her thin jacket. It wasn't the first time Marcus had branded her a dreamer or worse, crazy. Yet Sarah wasn't clinging to fantasy. She was clinging to survival. Her boys had asked questions she couldn't answer, why Daddy had left, why he said Mommy was unstable. And now she had one chance left, this piece of forgotten land. It wasn't just soil to her. It was the possibility of a home, a place no one could take away. But even as she steered her beat-up Honda down the dirt road to the farm, her sons peering wide-eyed at the collapsing barns and scorched fields, Sarah couldn't ignore the gnawing truth. She had no money, no experience, and no allies. All she had was determination and a brass skeleton key to a house that looked like it belonged in a ghost story. And yet, as she opened that crooked door and stepped into the dust-filled air of Alina Hartwell's abandoned farmhouse, she found more than peeling wallpaper and broken furniture. She found an envelope addressed simply, "To the new family." Inside was a letter written in delicate cursive that would change everything. "The land has secrets," it read. "Not the kind that hurt, but the kind that heal if you listen. The well may be dry, but water waits below. Trust the old ways, trust your instincts. Trust each other." Sarah had no idea then that this letter was the first breadcrumb leading her into a battle for her family's survival, and a discovery that would shake the entire county. From the moment she set foot inside the farmhouse, the weight of Alina Hartwell's words pressed on her. The house was a time capsule of the 1970s, avocado appliances, shag carpets, panel walls that swallowed the light. But beneath the dust was something uncanny. It was clean, prepared, almost waiting. Sarah's boys darted through the rooms, their voices echoing off the empty walls. For the first time in weeks, James whispered, "This is our house." Sarah corrected gently, "This is our home," though her voice trembled. The truth was, home felt more like an illusion than a reality. That evening, before she had a chance to breathe, a red Chevy pickup rolled into the drive. Dale Morrison, a weathered farmer with eyes the color of storm clouds, stepped out. He didn't smile, but his tone was not unkind. "You know what you've gotten yourself into?" he asked. His warning was blunt. The soil was cursed. Every farmer before her had failed, and without water she'd never survive. Sarah burned with quiet defiance. "I'm stronger than I look," she said. Dale's wife, Linda, soon appeared with a casserole steaming in her hands, offering both food and a glimpse of community. For one fragile moment, Sarah felt a thread of hope. But that hope evaporated quickly. Winter was coming. The house was broken. Supplies were low. The well had been dry for 30 years, and drilling could cost tens of thousands. Worse, her ex-husband circled like a vulture, waiting to prove her unfit. Still, Sarah clung to Alina's words, to the map tucked away in the cellar. and to the whisper of possibility that maybe, just maybe, the land could still save them. What she didn't know was that forces far bigger than drought or debt were about to converge on this so-called wasteland. Days turned into weeks, each harder than the last. Sarah learned quickly that survival on the farm was not romantic. It was brutal. Her soft city hands blistered from chopping wood, hauling water in jugs from the Morrison farm and scraping rot off the porch rails. Nights were colder than she imagined, the farmhouse groaning under winds that rattled her children's courage as much as the walls. Tommy's cough grew worse, reminding her with every wheeze that she couldn't afford a doctor. Bureaucracy soon came knocking in the form of county inspectors. Clipboards, cameras, and cold eyes documented everything. No. Approved water source, outdated septic, electrical hazards. 30 days to comply, they warned, or the property is deemed uninhabitable. Behind those words lay a darker threat. Her children could be taken away. Sarah's panic sharpened when Marcus called, smug as ever, suggesting the boys should live with him. He offered no help, only criticism, dismissing her dream as a delusion. Each night she stared at the violation notices, her pride cracking under the weight of impossible math. Repairs, heating, oil, food, water, thousands she didn't have, yet something in her refused to surrender. She reached out to Jack Patterson, a local driller known for fairness. His offer was almost unthinkable. He'd drill at cost, payment only if they struck water. "You've got two choices," he told her. "Try and maybe fail, or don't try and definitely fail." It wasn't just about water anymore. It was about proving that she could carve life out of this land when everyone, even Marcus, wanted her to give up. Sarah agreed. And so the drilling began, each shudder of the machinery echoing through the frozen ground like a heartbeat, each hour pulling her closer to either salvation or collapse. Jack worked methodically, digging deeper than a leaner had ever managed. At 50 feet, only clay. At 100, more clay. At 200, despair crept in. Sarah stood by the rig, her boys clinging to her coat, watching hope sink with every inch of dry earth. Then at 230 feet, the drill broke through with a roar. A geyser of crystal-clear water erupted skyward, 20 feet high, catching the sunlight like liquid diamonds. Neighbors rushed over as if called by destiny itself, and for a moment the entire farmyard froze in awe. Sarah's chest tightened, not just from relief but from the feeling that Aliner's prophecy was real. But the miracle didn't stop with water. As Jack pulled up the slurry, stones glistened amid the mud, first industrial grade, then larger, clearer, unmistakable diamonds. Actual diamonds, hidden for generations beneath cursed soil. Sarah's hands shook as she held them, the truth dawning. The land wasn't worthless, it was priceless. The Morrisians gasped, Jack's voice cracked, and her boys whispered, "We're rich, Mom." But even in that moment of triumph, Sarah felt unease. Miracles drew attention, and attention drew vultures. Word spread faster than wildfire. Within days, black SUVs and county sedans rolled into her drive. Officials arrived with thick manuals, developers with contracts, and slick men in suits who called her by her first name like they owned it. Richard Carroll, a silver-haired investor, offered her $10,000 to walk away, then $50,000 plus, a percentage, if she signed everything over. The county reminded her she still had 18 days to meet code or risk losing custody of her kids. And the state declared all mineral discoveries subject to regulation and environmental studies that could take years. What began as salvation now became war. Sarah wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was fighting to keep control of a fortune, her home, and her children. The storm that followed was unlike anything Sarah had ever faced. Her farmhouse became ground zero for battles she never wanted. County inspectors threatening eviction, developers dangling cash, lawyers reciting clauses designed to trick her, and child protective services knocking on her door under the guise of concern. Carol's offer sounded tempting, 50,000 up front and promises of security. But even Sarah's gut told her it was a trap. Standard industry rates, his lawyer said, avoiding real numbers. Translation, she'd get crumbs while they swallowed millions. Aliner had been clever, though. The deed included both surface and mineral rights. This land and everything under it belonged to Sarah. And yet the pressure mounted. CPS warned that her children might be removed for unsafe conditions. Her ex-husband whispered about custody battles. Every direction pointed to surrender. But neighbors like Dale and Linda Morrison reminded her of something bigger, community. "This isn't just about you," Dale told her. "It's about proving land like this can still belong to the people, not corporations." For the first time, Sarah realized her fight wasn't only for survival, it was for legacy. The diamonds, the water, the farm itself, it was all part of something larger. So when the suits crowded her porch with offers and threats, she raised her voice over them all. "This is my land. My son's land, and I will fight for it." The silence that followed wasn't victory, it was a warning, because the forces circling her weren't used to hearing no. Determined, Sarah chose the hardest path, to dig deeper, to claim the land's treasures herself rather than sell her soul for temporary relief. Jack Patterson stood by her side, his drill poised for the most important work of his career. Dawn broke cold and gray as machinery roared back to life. Neeg. Neighbors gathered, watching history in the making. The boys huddled against Sarah, their breath fogging in the chill, their questions unspoken but heavy in the air. This wasn't just about money. It was about proving she belonged here, that Aliner's faith in the land was not misplaced. The drill bit tore into the earth, each foot an act of defiance against poverty, bureaucracy, and betrayal. And as the samples came up, Jack's suspicions were confirmed. The diamonds weren't scattered. They were part of a vast vein stretching beneath the fields like a buried fortune waiting for the right hands. Water flowed freely, more than enough to sustain the farm. The impossible was now undeniable. Yet even as Sarah clutched the stones, her boy's eyes shining with dreams of warmth and stability, black SUVs idled at the end of the road. Power, money, and greed had scented blood. Developers wouldn't walk away. County officials wouldn't relent. And Marcus, her ex, saw an opening to claim custody by painting her as unstable. The discovery had solved her financial crisis, but ignited a war far more dangerous. The question now wasn't whether she could survive. It was whether she could hold on long enough to turn this miracle into a future before someone ripped it away. The battles escalated daily. Contracts slid across her table, each one more deceptive than the last. Lawyers recited terms she barely understood. County officials brandished deadlines like weapons. And every evening her boys asked the same question. "Are we going to have to leave, Mom?" Sarah stayed firm, though her voice often cracked. She fought back with the only tools she had: courage, stubbornness, and the truth that this was hers. She leaned on Aliner's research, her neighbor's quiet support, and Jack's expertise. Together they mapped the deposit, documented the water, and began the impossible task of proving that a single mother could stand against corporations and bureaucracy. The developers dangled riches, Marcus threatened lawsuits, and state officials warned of environmental studies that could stretch for years. But Sarah refused to cave. She wasn't just fighting for her home anymore. She was fighting to show her sons, and maybe the whole county, that resilience and faith could outlast greed. Every sleepless night she whispered the same vow to herself. This is home now, and no one is taking it away. In the end, Sarah realized the diamonds weren't the treasure, her determination was. The farm had tested her, stripped her bare, and forced her to decide who she really was. She wasn't the broken woman Marcus mocked. She wasn't just a dreamer grasping at fantasies. She was a fighter, a mother, and the rightful heir to a legacy Alina had believed in long before her. Standing on that land with the wind in her hair and her sons at her side, Sarah made her choice. She would drill. She would build. She would fight every battle thrown at her, because the land had chosen her and she was ready to prove worthy. For her sons, for her future, and for everyone who ever doubted her. And as she stared across the fields, she whispered the words that would define the rest of her life. "We're home, and we're staying." The question left for listeners is whether Sarah will succeed. It's how far she'll go and what new battles she'll face. Because in life, survival is never the end of the story, it's just the beginning. And that's where we leave Sarah tonight. But her fight, her determination, and her discovery remind us of something bigger. Sometimes the world writes us off, sometimes it says we're finished. But the truth is, we can still dig deeper, still uncover the treasure within us if we refuse to give up. If you were hooked by Sarah's journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this story with someone who needs hope right now. Because more stories like this, stories of resilience, survival, and unexpected fortune, are coming your way and you won't want to miss them.